You're kind of talking me into this one, and it's just low enough at 50.5. If it was in the upper 50s, I would say less, but let's do it. Let's go more here.
Yeah, and I swear to God, it's not just because he spells his last name the way I spell my first name. I actually genuinely looked at the stats. What's going on, folks, and welcome into Monkey Knife Fights preview show for Monday Night Football. I'm Conner Rowntree, and that's Nick Whalen of RotoWire. And Nick, I guess it's a fun one, other than Colt McCoy starting. That just throws a wrench into everything.
Yeah, that's what it's looking like, at least right now. We got the Kyler Murray trending toward absence Monday note up at RotoWire. It's not looking good for him. We're going to see Colt McCoy in all likelihood for a second straight week. And look, I thought McCoy actually played okay last week against the Rams. Obviously, that's a sinking ship. That is the LA Rams, and they just made Andy Dalton look fairly competent yesterday. But I think Colt McCoy could at least make this a game. I do like San Francisco in a pretty big way here. I mean, it's technically a road game, but as we know, neutral site, baby. We're going to Mexico tonight. Yeah,
Mexico City. And obviously it's a big 24 hours for Mexico. They take on Poland tomorrow in the World Cup, and then obviously they have the NFL game there tonight. And I guess our producer messaging in the chat, I didn't even know that. Well, there you go. Everybody finding out some fun tidbits for tonight's game. Now, Jimmy G and Colt McCoy are the starting quarterbacks, so we might as well start there. And Jimmy G coming in at 245.5 passing yards. Colt McCoy 224.5. I mean, not too much to say. I think that the San Francisco 49ers are going to be able to pass the ball against this Cardinals defense, or lack thereof. Oh. And it's just, I don't have a lot of faith in Jimmy G, but this line seems doable. So I'm going to take the more for Monday Night Football.
So I agree with everything you said. I think they can throw the ball against this Cardinals defense. The question is, are they going to have to? Because I also think they can run the ball on the Cardinals. And I think if the 49ers can run it, that's what they prefer to do, right? So I think ideally, this is a game where they're big favorites. It's not a true road game. They should be in a good spot here to take care of business against a backup quarterback and the Cardinals. So I think this is a game where they get the ground game working. We did not really see that last week against the Chargers, kind of an up and down game for that offense. They probably had to throw the ball more than they wanted to, but I think this is a Deebo Samuel game. It's a Christian McCaffrey game. So I like the 49ers to win this game with relative ease, but I don't think they're going to ask Jimmy G to throw the ball all over the yard here. I think he has a decent night, but I don't think he gets close to 250 yards because they won't need him to.
Yeah, no, I totally see that. And that's why I was sort of humming against that line. And I have no faith in this Cardinals defense, like zero. So I feel like giving them any sort of prop right now, giving Jimmy Garoppolo the less is just, it's unwarranted. It's an unwarranted flash of confidence from my end. That's all. And I can't get behind it. Colt McCoy for 225 is interesting. How are you seeing Colt McCoy come in, Nick?
Well, I think you could make the case that it's the complete opposite, right? Where if San Francisco is running the ball, they're putting up points, Arizona is going to need to be able to keep up. And we saw Colt McCoy go over this number just last week. I mean, 238 against that Rams defense in a game where, the Cardinals led fairly comfortably. They won that game, I think, by double digits, and he still threw the ball 37 times. So to me, that's pretty encouraging. Obviously, having DeAndre Hopkins back for this offense has been massive. It looked like earlier this week that Marquise Brown would maybe have a chance to come back for this game. Now he's not expected to play. I don't think we're going to see him. So, this Arizona offense likely going to be a little bit overmatched, but I'm going to make the complete opposite case as I did for Jimmy G. If Arizona wants to stay in this game, they're going to have to throw the ball. So it might not be the prettiest night for Colt McCoy, but he could get over 40 attempts here. And I think that's probably enough to push him over 224.5.
Yeah, no, I see that as well. And I see him having to keep pace. And that's kind of why I was leaning towards the more as well. And that's what that's kind of what you just said. And then he, as you alluded to before, he has the weapons around him to do it. Like D-Hop is still out there. You can lean on guys like that, and you can lean on James Conner out of the backfield, who's also a great receiving back as well. Some swing passes, some screen passes for chunk plays, first down plays. Those never hurt. All right, well, let's get into those skill positions now, if you will. And I guess it all starts with CMC, right? It really has become the CMC show, and you never know what you're gonna get with the rushing line. We're looking at the fantasy points right now, 20 fantasy points for CMC, and I think he crushes that. Especially on Monkey Knife Fight, where the PPR is 1 full point per reception, and you have a back that's not only receiving but also a threat to pass the ball as well, as we've seen since he's arrived in San Fran. So yeah, I'm taking the more on the fantasy points 100%.
Yeah, looking at the yardage number, 65.5 at MKF, like to me, that's a little more iffy. I'm with you. If I'm going more on one of those, it's the fantasy points, because like you said with McCaffrey, it's like even when he's rolling, like when he has his big fantasy days, he's not necessarily that type of guy who's going to give you like 150 rushing yards. Oftentimes he's hanging around 60 to 90 yards rushing, but he'll also tack on 7 catches for 80 yards. And that's really, why he's such a valuable fantasy player. So, they have other options in the backfield. I think they probably value him more as the Swiss Army knife type, as opposed to this between the tackles runner. I don't think that's how they want to use him. So I'm going to split the difference here. I'm going to go less on 65.5 rushing yards, but I'm with you, Connor. I'm going more on 20.5 fantasy points.
Yeah, I completely agree with that breakdown. I mean, if I look at the numbers last week, even on 14 attempts last week, he only mustered 38 yards. And the Chargers aren't the best rush defense by any means.
No, they are not.
So I mean, I'm not saying Arizona's any better, but it just, even when he's getting 10 plus carries, he's not getting to that 65-yard barrier. I mean, we did see him his first game there. Obviously, he busted just under 100 yards, but 65.5 is a lot to ask from a guy that, as you said, doesn't necessarily need to be a all 3 down back in San Francisco right now. They can extend his usage by limiting his situational play, right? So especially a guy that's had injury problems in the past. Now, Brandon Ayuk, you can see him right above. You might as well talk about him because he's there, and I think that he could actually be a factor in this game due to the, as I said earlier, the lack of defense for the Cardinals. I think the 60 yards is actually attainable from Ayuk because of the fact that he's that big play. He's the big play guy. He's the guy. Deebo Samuel is obviously going to draw the coverage. You're going to have to look at Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield. And Brendan Ayuk, I mean, you have George Kittle as well to account for. Ayuk seems to be the forgotten guy that goes for a touchdown, at least a touchdown or 2 every week these days.
Yeah, really, it's been somewhat of a disappointing fantasy year for Deebo Samuel, who, on any given play, you still feel like he can get to the end zone, but he's had a lot of down games. And Ayuk has been, I think he's really taken a big step forward this year. I think he's now halfway through his third NFL season. And I think after his rookie year, you're starting to question, like, did they take the wrong receiver? It was a loaded class. Did they kind of miss out on some of these guys who are popping off? But he's come into his own, and he's been really, really good, really dependable. 3 straight games with at least 80 yards. The catches have been there. His floor has basically been 6 catches, 7, 8, 9 targets every single week. He's got a couple games with double-digit targets. So, I think we talk a lot about McCaffrey. You talk a lot about George Kittle. You talk about Deebo Samuel. But to me, Ayuk has for sure leapfrogged George Kittle in the hierarchy. I mean, George Kittle feels like he has like 1 or 2 catches a game at this point. And Ayuk, I think, really does have the trust of Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think that keeps on going. I mean, he is the number 1 option in that receiving game. And obviously they have some gadgety guys who they use as well. But when they're looking to push the ball downfield, it's not Deebo Samuel, it's not George Kittle, it's Brandon Ayuk. Yeah,
I completely agree with that. And I think, we're in step on that breakdown. Absolutely love it. So that's a good more spot. And I might be logging on to MKF later, like maybe right now. You don't know what I'm doing on the screen. All right, well, let's talk about Deebo Samuel, because you talked about him and this disappointing fantasy season. I love that you brought that up. And I think it's almost like that Swiss Army knife version that you talked about with Christian McCaffrey, but they're almost trying to overuse Samuel, it feels. And it's not working. You saw the 4 rush attempts for 27 yards last week, 6 targets, only 2 receptions for 24 yards. The week before, and then he's just not getting involved in the offense. He was obviously hurt, but the week before that, he had 6.9 fantasy points. So what are we really getting out of Deebo Samuel? I'm not seeing anything consistent enough for me to want to push the more. I know he's a boomer bust kind of guy, or at least he should not be. He should be a boom kind of guy, but it's turning into boomer bust. And I think 14.5 points. If you were to ask me at the start of the season, 100% I'm taking the more with how I'm seeing and how many weapons there are. With what I'm seeing, pardon me, and how many weapons there are on the San Francisco offense, I have to take the less.
Yeah, me too. I mean, that's been the safer play this year. I mean, he's gone more a couple of times, but I mean, these game logs just don't look anything like they did last year, where, I think over the first like 6 or 7 weeks of the year, he had 400-yard receiving games. He had multiple games late in the year with double-digit carries. Maybe we should have seen the writing on the wall a little bit when Deebo Samuel basically asked to carry the ball less this offseason, didn't want to take that pounding, and, bringing in McCaffrey has certainly helped with that, but it just feels like they've almost phased that part out of his game. And that's when he was really dangerous, running between the tackles, kind of bringing that receiver mentality to the running back position. And, now it feels like maybe he'll be back there for one carry a game. They'll use him on a jet sweep, but it's just not the threat that it was last season. And he's kind of half receiver, half running back, doesn't really seem committed to either one. And his numbers are suffering. I mean, one 100-yard game so far from Deebo Samuel on the year, that came against the Rams in week 4. He only has 3 total touchdowns. Like, like you said, there's still going to be probably 2 or 3 weeks the rest of the way where he pops off and he goes more on this number, but you just don't feel confident in it. And it sucks because I think when he's rolling, he's the most fun player to watch in the entire NFL, whether you're a Niners fan or not. But I'm with you. I mean, until he really shows us that he could be that guy, you got to go less.
Yeah, like 100%. Another great breakdown brought to you by RotoWire's Nick Whalen, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we might as well talk about James Conner because he's on the screen. 13.5 fantasy points. He popped off last week, and his line of 50.5 rushing yards is something that I think is attackable in this one. I like the more on this. And just, I'm looking at I'm looking at over 20 touches last week. Now, granted, he only garnered just over 60 yards on those 20 touches, but still, with that amount of carries, it seems like 50 yards is more than attainable. Now, you did allude to earlier, well, Arizona might have to pass the ball to be consistent in this one, to be in a battle. It's not going to be like that Rams game where last week where Arizona kind of blew the brakes off the Rams. But one thing I do want to note, the week prior, when James Conner did return from injury, 7 carries for 45 yards. So he did utilize his touches well in that one. Yeah. So I am going to take the more on this because I think James Conner has just kind of cemented himself into this offense as their go-to running back. Obviously, they made the move in the offseason to quite literally give him that role of RB1. So I really think James Conner he's too important to this offense, especially with a guy like Colt McCoy starting. I think you have to lean on James Conner, and we saw that in that Rams game as well.
Yeah, this is a really tough line. I think he needs to get off to a good start. That goes without saying if he's going to go more here, because it's easy to see the Cardinals falling behind, and that doesn't mean that they don't use James Conner, but it means he's probably more of a pass catcher out of the backfield, and that's not helping us at all when it comes to this prop. So I think he needs to generate some yardage in the first quarter. If the Cardinals have their first 2 drives and James Conner has like 4 carries for 7 yards, I think we're in trouble here, because all of a sudden he has to make that up in what might be a pretty unfriendly game script. But I think you could look back, the last time that they played a really elite defense was probably the Eagles in week 5 when James Conner was active. 9 carries for 55 yards against that Eagles run defense. Like, if you could do that against Philly, I think you can do that against San Francisco. So, at first glance, you say, the Niners are this great run defense. Nobody can run on them. Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. You're kind of talking me into this one, and it's just low enough at 50.5. If it was in the upper 50s, I would say less, but let's do it. Let's go more here.
Yeah, and I swear to God, it's not just because he spells his last name the way I spell my first name. I actually genuinely looked at the stat. It's just the stats tell me yes, and then the game script that you're presenting with Colt McCoy kind of has me nervous. But I think I got to go with the consistency that I see. Colt McCoy being the backup quarterback. Obviously, no offense to him, but you lean on veterans like James Conner in those kind of situations. Now, another veteran that Colt McCoy definitely will be leaning on is DeAndre Hopkins. It's just the question for us is, can he get to 75.5 yards? And I think he does. I think he does out of necessity. If he's healthy, if he goes the whole game, I think, as you said earlier, They're going to have to throw the ball to keep pace. Your number one guy, he finds a way open. He is that good. I'm not worried about him getting open. So I'll take the more on DeAndre Hopkins.
Same here with ease. I mean, 103, 159, 98 yards. Those are 3 of his 4 games since coming back from injury. Seattle did a good job of containing him and shutting him down. But, last time we saw DeAndre Hopkins a week ago, he was burning Jalen Ramsey multiple times in that game. And, this is still a 49ers defense that's banged up in the secondary. I think they are exploitable. That might be the one area where Arizona does have the distinct advantage is DeAndre Hopkins against those corners. So ultimately it's probably a futile effort. It could be one of those, fairly inefficient days where DeAndre Hopkins has like 11 catches for 98 yards or something like that. And Arizona loses by 2 touchdowns, but he is the number one option far and away right now in this offense. And I don't think that changes without Kyler Murray.
Yeah, no, you nail on the head. Now I think it's time for that touchdown dance. We have Rondale Moore. Do you have anything lined up for us? Yeah, we might as well talk about Rondale Moore. Exciting, explosive guy. Love me some Rondale Moore, especially when he finds his way to the end zone like he tends to do. Ooh, touchdown dance coming up next. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. All right, Rondale Moore. Nick, what do you have for us?
Well, I know his reception yards prop is at 59.5 on MKF. His receptions number is 5.5. I'm trying to decide what to do there. Which one of those I like more? I think I like the yardage just because he is that guy that could break off. An 8-yard out can become a 35-yarder down the sideline because he is just that shifty. 92, 69, 94 yards in each of the last 3 games. I do worry about him long-term once Hollywood Brown is back. Then he's pretty clearly the number 3. But as we said, no Hollywood in this game. So let's go more on both. Huh? I mean, he's gone over both of these totals very easily over the last 3 weeks. So we'll go more on those receptions. I think he gets to at least 6. And I will go more on the yardage for Rondale Moore. I think he gets to at least 60 yards in this game.
Yeah, it's just the way they utilize him too, because of what you said, right? They try to get the ball into his hands with his speed, and he can catch the ball behind the line of scrimmage on a wide receiver screen and turn it into a 50-yard gain. So that not only helps with the receptions because that's an easy catch, but you get the yards there as well. And I'm looking at his target share over the last couple of weeks. I'm seeing, holy crap, this guy has 23 targets over the last 2 games, 9 grabs last week. Yeah, give me the more on both of those. Just out of his playmaking ability. It really is. It's a tip of the cap to Rondale Moore. Now let's jump in to the touchdown dance. And you have so many playmakers on the field tonight on both sides of the football. It's a lot of fun when you have to do a touchdown dance like this. And I think if you ignore Christian McCaffrey, you're not doing your job. So I think we have to take Christian McCaffrey. So I'll start off my touchdown dance with Christian McCaffrey. I'll go DeAndre Hopkins number 2 because, well, he's DeAndre Hopkins. And then from the 49ers, I like Brandon Ayuk. I talked about it earlier. I think he's that deep shot guy. And I think that deep shot is going to be there against a pass defense that I've kind of, I beat the dead horse this show. I really don't believe in that pass defense.
I like all those picks. I'm not going to go against McCaffrey. That's for sure. Feels like they kind of want to make a point to show the rest of the league, like, hey, we got this guy. This is why we got him. It feels like a little bit of a showcase game for McCaffrey. So I'm with you there. I like Ayuk as well, but I'm going to go Eli Mitchell, right? I feel like we kind of forgot about this guy. He made his return last week. Had 89 yards, 18 carries in that game against the Chargers. Really, kind of outshined McCaffrey. Unlikely, and hasn't played since week 1, so we're still kind of figuring out what Eli Mitchell's role is going to be. Obviously, he's the number 2 behind McCaffrey, but I still think he's going to see enough action. So if you're looking for a little bit of a non-traditional dark horse pick for the MKF TD dance, I would lean toward Elijah Mitchell. Yeah,
and I really like that Elijah Mitchell look because of something that you had brought up earlier in the show, and just thinking on my feet, right? McCaffrey's injury issues in the past and his usage. This might be, I know he's early on with this team, and it's still learning the playbook and whatnot. However, they don't want him getting hurt, right? He's their shiny new toy. You don't want him grinding out those first and 10 yards, those second and long yards. That's where you want Elijah Mitchell taking those hammerings from the D linemen and linebackers, and he's effective at it, as you just said, very effective at it. Nick, what is your prediction for Monday Night Football?
I like the Niners here. I really do. It didn't feel like they played that well last week against the Chargers. Defense stepped up in the second half, but it felt like a B- game by that offense. But I think this is a great spot for the Niners. It feels like everybody's finally getting healthy on that offense. I know the number at most books is up to 10 right now. That is high. I think I might take Arizona to cover 10 if it stays in the double digits. But I like the 49ers to win. I will say 49ers 30, Cardinals 21.
Yeah, I like that too. And I remember, I think on Friday, the line was 8.5. And then over yesterday, everyone's like, oh, it's the only game tonight. I want to see Christian McCaffrey. Oh, let's hit the 49ers. I literally think that was the mindset. However, yeah, I'm completely with you on that. I think they can cover the 10, but any double digit ask is just so much, especially after sweating the Ravens yesterday with 13 points all the way for them to win by 10. It's like, well, you could have done that the whole time. Anyway, yeah, I'm completely with you on that one. I'll take them to cover because Mexico City, Christian McCaffrey game. I'll go 30-17. I like the 30 points. I think that's a good number. 30-17.
The total for this game is only at 43, which is a little suspicious to me. I think these teams can score. I mean, I know altitude is an issue down there. I mean, it's like double the altitude of Denver. So, maybe that's being factored in a little bit, but that total seems low to me.
Well, if anything, then the field goal units can blast it from 75 yards away. So the over's looking nice. Actually, that might be the sexiest pick out of them all. Thanks for bringing that one up, Nick. Nick, let all the people know where they can find you and all those quality contents and great little betting lines.
Yeah, if you want little insights on like Robbie Gould props for tonight, you can find me on Twitter at my last name, Whalen, but the L is a 1. You can find me there on Instagram as well. Always love doing these shows for MKF, working with you guys, working with Dan, working with Brian. I know we got a mega show coming tomorrow as well. I think we're talking NFL and college football on the same damn show.
Wow, you guys are just going to be sweating that, eh? Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I guess it is Thanksgiving, right? Everything, got to do it up, got to do it large, got to do it live.
Do it big. Wouldn't
All right,
have it any other way.
All right, folks, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's edition of Monday Night Football's preview show here on Monkey Night Fight. That's Nick Whalen. I'm Conner Rowntree. Enjoy the football.